You good? Good, Adrian? Yeah. All right. Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome everybody to our December board meeting. I appreciate everybody coming out. I want to definitely extend a great thanks to Ms. Clemens that she is here this evening. I did hear that Nathan had his first official solo takeoff and landing today, and so congratulations on that. And you survived it as well, right?
I can tell you, his sister said that now that he can fly a plane, that there's no excuse for him to not know how to operate a microwave anymore.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that. Yeah. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Caldwell if he would do the Pledge of Allegiance with us.
Attention. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. And Mrs. Crawford, would you mind reading the Clay County Schools mission statement? Please?
Sure. The mission of Clay County Schools is to build high-quality learning environments that ensure all students learn at high levels.
And the only announcement we have is our next regular meeting is January the 23rd at 6 o'clock here in the boardroom. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the agenda as it was emailed and as it's presented in front of you currently.
I make a motion.
Second. Mr. Jones, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then next we will have our public comment section. Mr. Rose.
Back there better.
We'll put you front and center.
Paul Rose, I would like to address the board. I don't have my comments written tonight, so I won't be handing them to you. Reference the open way learning proposal that I think is going to get voted on tonight. I looked into that, and certainly coming away from the last board meeting was very interesting and exciting, thinking about the potential. It seemed like a really good approach to take advantage of some of the things that have been developed by external references and really personalize them to Clay County. And that's very interesting, and it allays a lot of concerns. So certainly I didn't see anything that should raise anybody's concern. Gave me a very good impression. And my question is, has the board, other than, and this is certainly not to dissuade conversations that Mr. Cole, you had with the Open Way folks, has the board itself had a personal eyeball-to-eyeball presentation by the people who will be executing this potential project? Because I know there's a big difference between what might be written and what you get out of a face-to-face presentation and discussion. Any important hiring activity always includes a personal interview. So that was one of my questions. Has there been a face-to-face presentation to the board? And has there been any conversations with references or previous clients in this type of a project to get an idea of has the recipient, did they achieve the expected results? There's always a lot of learning and shifting during a continuous project like this. You throw the spear in the right direction, you get somewhere in that direction, you learn a little, you change your direction a little bit, but you still achieve the same ultimate goal. And that's another question. Has there been any conversation or feedback from a similar project that has already been executed before making a vote to that? And if the vote is delayed for whatever reason, is there a real significant impact? Because I see this as a really important step to personalize a lot of really good activity that has been done across a broader scale, like a state level activity, like the portrait of a graduate, to personalize that to what it means right here in Clay County. So I leave that question with them. Thank you.
And members of the board, normally in public comment section we would not answer questions, but I will answer that one because we do have a presentation tonight, and our two presenters from Open Way Learning are right there, so we will have that.
Suspicious as I walk in here.
And while the board could elect, if they chose to think about it another month before taking action on approving that grant, there would be an impact just because we've already kind of worked out 5 dates beginning in January through April 3rd that we would get community members together to talk about this work and how we want to see instruction going in the future. It's nothing that we couldn't work around, but there are 2 of those dates are in January before the next board meeting that we would have to push our schedule back. So that's the answer to your second question.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Next, we will have our recognition section. We have Mr. Overland with the high school here.
You just kind of come over here so we can all look at you. Good evening, Clay County. We've had some international exchange students with us at Hayesville High School during this academic year, and I'd like to introduce them tonight. I think this has been a really positive experience, not only for these 3 young people, but also for our Clay County students. Getting to know one another, learning from one another about cultural exchanges is one of the best aspects of a foreign exchange experience. And I should also say that I think it requires quite a spirit of adventure and maybe even a little bit of courage to come to a foreign country where you don't really know anybody and just dive right in. And all 3 of you have done that. So thank you for that. I do hope that when this is completed and you go back home, that you'll look back fondly on your experiences here and the friendships that you've made here in Hayesville. Our first guest tonight is Felicia Falk. Felicia, raise your hand. Felicia will be with us for the entire school year. She's a guest in the home of Jackie Gottlieb and Lauren Gottlieb. So Felicia has been studying English since 5th grade. She enjoys traveling. She's visited France, Spain, the Netherlands. Her favorite food is lasagna. And Felicia also played JV volleyball for Hayesville this fall. And I'm saying her name correctly tonight. It is not Felicia, it's Felicia. So I'm getting that right. Our next 2 students have been in Hayesville living with Mike and Jean Gora, who are here with us in the audience tonight. They're here with us for the first semester only, and they'll be returning home after exams are completed. So we have Yuli Wolf, not Julie, but Yuli. Wait, here's Yuli. Yuli is from Austria, and I didn't mention, but Felicia is from Germany. So Felicia's from Germany, Yuli is from Austria. Yuli enjoys horseback riding, cooking, baking. She also plays the flute. Back home, she has a cat and 2 guinea pigs. She has a talent for languages. She's not only studied English, but also Spanish and French. And this year, she has participated in cross country and wrestling, currently for HHS. Jacopo Matacari is from Narni, Italy. He's got some interesting sporting backgrounds: windsurfing, horseback riding, skiing. He never mentioned anything about football americano. But we found him, and he was a big part of our team this year at Hayesville. He also, in school, he enjoys physics and astronomy. So I'm going to have a seat and leave them up here. And if you all would like to ask any questions of them or just have a dialogue for a few minutes, I'll step out.
You got to slide over there and get on camera, guys. Slide up there around the. There we go. Did the board have any questions for our foreign exchange students?
What do you think of this area?
It's a beautiful place. It's fun and there are some things to do. It's a great place.
Is it similar geographically to where you guys are from, or very dissimilar?
I don't have many mountains in my area, so this is really great, especially the sunsets and sunrises every morning and evening over the mountains. It's pretty.
Yeah, and we in Austria it's a lot colder, so there's a lot of snow, and here it's warm. And
you miss the snow?
a little bit.
So when you return, will you be still a student in secondary school, or are you in university?
Not yet. I have still a year of high school and then I go to college or, yeah.
I have 2 more years.
Yeah, me too.
What has been your favorite thing to do so far?
That's a really difficult question. I've done a lot of things. I really enjoyed going rafting because that's something I've never did before. And yeah, just the small moments that are different from Germany and my family. It's a really good experience.
Yes, there are a lot of things. But we went to, like, for Thanksgiving, we went to Denver together. And that was great. We had a great Thanksgiving there.
Yeah, just spending time with people, friends, or doing whatever, it's all great.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate your
guys.
time. Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
having
So
us.
good to see you.
Next, we have Miss Moss with the Hazel Middle School Chorus.
Good evening. Unfortunately, our chorus kids are busy doing other things tonight. I know my own personal child, who is here to be recognized tonight, he's at a ball game, and I think that's just a testament to how active our kids are, not just in chorus, but in other extracurricular areas as well. And I think that is very important for our kids and for our families here in our community. So I just want to quickly say that I'm very proud of our chorus program. We just recently did a performance here on campus and plan to get back active in our auditorium and out in the community and also on the state level. So that's what we're here to recognize tonight, is 3 of our chorus students from our Hazel Middle School chorus program that have achieved the highest level of choir within the state, which is our state honors chorus. They have to go and audition for this chorus in front of a judge of their voice part. This same judge auditions all of the students in that same voice part across the state. So they try to make it very fair and hearing all the same people in that same voice part. So the numbers were a little bit down this year. 459 singers auditioned from across the state for middle school, and 131 of those 459 were selected, and I'm proud to say that Hazel Middle School had 3 of those selected. If you'll look at the slide, you'll see those students there. We have Micah Moss. He was selected as a bass 2. Madison Sullivan selected as an alto 1, and Tucker Dockery selected as a tenor 1. We had a lot of different things going on. They worked very hard on their music when it came down to it. We had 2 of them that got struck down with strep and flu. Luckily, Micah pushed through and he represented us as a bass 2. And so that's why you see him there in the pictures. But I'm very proud of all 3 of them. It's very difficult to learn not just the audition piece, but also to learn 5 additional songs in a very short amount of time, in 3 weeks' time. And they have to sing from memory when they get there. So it's kind of a high-stress thing, but they always represent very well, and I'm super proud of them. So again, that's Micah Moss, Madison Sullivan, and Tucker Dockery. We're looking forward to going to All-State in the spring, and also some of our state-level competitions and festivals, as those are getting back across the state. We've had some COVID regulations that we've had to deal with across the board, as singing, playing instruments and things like that often seem to be the thing that, spreads things in the air, as you guys know. So we're getting back on board with the North Carolina Music Educators Association and looking forward to once again representing Clay County at the state level. So thank you very much for letting me speak with you guys tonight. And thank you for your support with all of our programs, arts programs, and specifically chorus. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Moss.
You're welcome.
did Micah make it as a base because he was coming back from strep throat and had like the rough voice going?
We'll see if his voice back up in the rain. But right now, he's full force
Good.
baritone bass.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. So next we have our report section, and we have Miss Mary Cawthorn, who is our Gear Up coordinator.
And members of the board, you have a copy of the presentation as well.
Good evening. I want to thank Mr. Cole for inviting me here to talk about Gear Up. And the first thing I want to share with you is the student survey reports. We give the cohort students, which are the 6th through 9th graders this year, a Gear Up survey once a year. And there's approximately 18 questions on this survey pertaining to their post-secondary operations, their college knowledge, their school support, parental involvement, and resource exploration by the school. The majority of the questions are in statement form, and the students answer on a sliding scale from 0 to 5, with the 0 being strongly disagree and 5 being strongly agree. So if they answer 3, that's kind of a neutral. That's kind of in the middle. Next. So the survey was given to our cohort students in 6th through 9th grades, and you can see the completion results there on the screen. The middle school students all completed the survey at the same time during their first period class because it was easier to do that. They're all in the same place at the same time. Our high school had a little bit lower completion rate, but it was a little bit harder to have all of them completed at the same time because they're all mixed. They're in different grades at the same time. So Mr. Oberlin and I have talked, and next year when we survey the 9th and 10th graders at the high school, we're going to have them come to the lecture hall during wind times. And so we'll complete the survey then and get a little bit higher completion rate. Next. So the first statement on the Gear Up survey is asking them about whether or not they have a college-going dream. And as you can see across the board, approximately 83% of our current 6th through 9th graders have a college-going dream. So that's pretty awesome. So now they're in the dreaming stage of it, so now we have to, plan it and get them there.
Is it made clear, Ms. Cawthorn, to the students that when we're talking about a college-going dream, we're talking about community college, university, technical school to earn an advanced job certificate?
Any kind of college beyond, or any kind of education beyond their high school graduation date.
Okay.
And the 3 statements that they can say yes or no to or choose from is, I do not plan to go to college. I do plan to go to college, but I don't know how to do it. And the third one is, yes, I have a plan for going to college, and I have some idea of how to accomplish it. So if the students chose statement 2 or 3, then they were considered to have a college-going dream. And then this next section of the dealt with the college knowledge. These rates are really, really low. However, I'm not surprised, and I'm actually kind of surprised that they are as high as they are. Because the questions ask the students, do you know how to complete a college application? Do you know how to complete FAFSA? Well, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and even 9th graders, really, that's not a conversation we've had with them a whole lot yet. So I really, in the following years, I look for these rates to really skyrocket because we really hit that about 10th and 11th grade years, making sure that we're talking about how do you apply to college, how do you get a good college for a best fit, taking them on college trips, just to tour campuses and everything, and then of course we hit FAFSA hard. So I really look for these numbers to go up. I'm not at all surprised that they're kind of low. And then the next section, this section had 7 questions, and it dealt with how much support the school offers the student. Does the student have somebody that they can talk to about school problems? Do they have somebody that will support their transition? And those kinds of questions. This survey was given in September. So we were in school about 3 weeks. So we had a lot of new enrollees in Clay County schools, and we were just in the 3rd or 4th week of school. So our students were still getting to know people. So I think for the time frame, these numbers are really good. If we were to give that same survey today, I bet those numbers would probably be in the 80s or 90%, that they have somebody at school that believes in them and helps them accomplish what they've set out to do. So I also look for these numbers too for next year to go higher, because we'll follow the same cohort of the same kids will answer the same survey until they graduate. The next section dealt with parental involvement in the student's perspective. I have always said that we have some of the best parents in Clay County schools, and this just proves it. You know, our parents are always there for our kids. They're always making sure that they have opportunities to participate in the after-school activities, the gear-up trips, you know, anything that helps the student gain better access and to academic adventures. Our parents are always there. One thing that I do plan to do next year is to collect the parent emails and build an email list for the parents. I do send out a kind of a Gear Up newsletter for the students, hoping that they will share it with the parents, but also want to get the parents' emails and start sending it to them directly. Just kind of some tips and tricks and things that they can talk to their students about regarding post-secondary aspirations. And then the final report, or the final section of the survey, was one statement, and it asked the student, it said, I explore available learning resources within my school to better enhance my academic performance. Just a reminder, this was taken in the first month of school, so a lot of our students probably were not yet aware of what services or resources the school had to offer. So like I said, if we were to give this same survey again, I would suspect these numbers to be in the 80s or 90s at this point in the school year. That's the student survey. So next, some really exciting news. This is about our post-secondary enrollment for Clay County schools for the classes of 2020, 2021, and 2022. In 2020, which was the year of COVID, we had about almost 54% of our students enroll in a post-secondary education. So that was 50 out of 93 students, which for COVID year, that was really great. 2021, we had a little bit of a dip. We had 50% of our students out of 100 students enrolled in some sort of post-secondary institution. But then for this past graduating class of 2022, out of the 10 Gear Up counties, Clay County schools had the highest number of students enrolled. So I'm really excited about that. We were at 64%. The class of 2019, which was pre-COVID, was 64.56%. So we are back to where we were pre-COVID. Nationwide, for the class of 2021, there has been a 6% drop in post-secondary enrollment. So the fact that Clay County schools has regained to where we were pre-pandemic is something to celebrate. So that's pretty exciting. And then the next slide will show us where we are, Clay County, as far as in regards to the 10 districts that are Gear Up counties. Now the 10 Gear Up counties are Allegheny, Ashburn, Clay, Graham, Madison, Swain, Watauga, Wilkes, and Yancey County. They do not have the names on this slide. We're working on getting that changed, but on this slide we are district number 4. So you can see that we have the highest post-secondary enrollment rate, which is really something to celebrate. And then the last slide just shows us the percentage of college by gender. And so we typically have more females enroll in post-secondary than we do males. I think that's for a number of reasons. There's more job opportunities straight out of high school for our males, landscaping, farming, auto mechanics, welding, those types of things. We also have several of our young men enlisted in the military straight out of high school. So, so that number is a little low, but it's not really surprising. One thing that we are working on are the students that are not interested in going on to a post-secondary institution of any kind. We're working with them to go ahead and complete some CCP classes that can lead them to certifications or to get their AS degree while they're in college, or while they're still in high school through Tri-County Community College. And that will just help them to have some more marketable skills in their back pocket. Other thing that also helps them is the CTE classes that they take and the certifications that they get through that with the work keys. And I think that's it. Do you guys have any questions for me?
One thing I would add is the addition of the welding program, I think is going to have an impact on the number of male, and I hope female students sign up for it as well, but we have quite a bit of male interest in welding as a future career, and with the addition of Mr. Godfrey, who's certified not only to teach high school welding, but to also teach college level welding on our campus, I think we're going to have some male students that start adding a post-secondary certification in welding that will be added to that percentage.
And one thing that Ravonda and I are talking about, our CTE director and I are talking about doing this summer is Tri-County has a lot of credentialing programs. Mm-hmm. And so what we plan to do this summer is to take students that are interested to go visit the auto mechanics section. Mm-hmm. And then we'll take them to Jackie Jones or Firestone so that they can see where the skills that they'll gain at Tri-County can help them get a pretty good paying job. The same with the culinary department. We have taken kids down there to the culinary department. They've had a blast. But we'll take them to the culinary department, let them talk with chef, get some culinary skills in, and then take them to one of our local farm-to-table restaurants. So just to kind of tie all of that together for them.
Yeah, just as a reminder, the Career and College Promise Program, where the General Assembly pays for high school students to take college level credits while they're a high school student. That also applies to career technical education programs. Well, at the community college, it's called continuing education, but they're job certification programs. Those are paid for high school students as well. We just have to enter into an MOU with the community college with that program to connect our district to the community college. And so our students that don't necessarily want to go to even community college to get a 2-year degree or to a 4-year university, they may be interested in going to get a welding certification or an HVAC certification, and they can make a really good living with those certifications. So again, I think that would also, the more we can do that, the more opportunities we have, we will be able to grow that percentage of male students that have post-secondary options.
And I was happy to see, like the parental involvement. That's I was very excited to see the higher percentages in there because I was a little worried. I have to admit, you just never know.
Clay County's got great parents.
You're exactly right. And
We've
so
got
I was
some of the best.
super proud that was as high as it was. Yeah.
Ms. Carter, great information. Thank you for what you do. And I just want to comment further on that. The parental involvement was amazing. Mm-hmm. Do the parents get the information on the applying for college, all that information?
Yes.
Yes,
they do.
We do, don't we?
We typically hold FAFSA nights, and then where we have someone from CFNC come in and talk about FAFSA and the importance of filing it. Our CAC advisor, Brooke Reynolds, is with us this year. She's been phenomenal in help working with students and their families. And then we have some other outside resources too, for some parents that just aren't comfortable letting, anybody know their personal financial information, which that's fine. But we do have options to hook them up with strangers who are also well versed in FAFSA completion and everything. So, and our FAFSA completion rate was pretty high last year, and of course, we're always pushing the bar and looking to increase that for this year. So.
But I would say, as a parent of a current senior, for sure, there's tons of info out there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Between Mary and Brooke.
And Brooke, yes.
Yeah, there's lots of information being passed along.
Sometimes it's difficult to navigate. So
it is. It's not even doing it just.
I think the hard
2 years
part,
ago with another one is going through it again. It's just
yes.
It is. It's a lot to get through.
Releasing it in a way that. How can you get it from the fire hose and be able to take it in an organized way?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and two, the FAFSA has to be completed every year. So I've had some of my, graduated cohort Europe students reach back out and say, "Can you help me? Can I come by?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." So, so that's kind of nice that once they've graduated, they know that they still have people here to reach out to. So, so that's good. So, and then the other thing too is we do have the Google scholarship calendar that all seniors have access to, that we put national scholarships, local scholarships, state scholarships. We have them on there, and all they have to do is click on the scholarship. It takes them to the scholarship page. You guys have probably seen it. the senior parents. And so we work really hard to keep that updated and to just get, lots of different scholarships on there, so.
Ms. Compton, I also want to say, like Robert did, thank you for this. This was great. I'd like to also ask a question.
Sure.
Do you have a data showing from 10th grade up to 12th grade also? That maybe sometime we could get to see that, or does it stop as far as like the questionnaire for them?
We
don't do
don't
that, or
well,
the reason?
I take that back. So we only survey the cohort students, which are the 6th through 9th grades. But this year we did survey the 10th and 11th graders. That data hasn't been compiled yet, but when we get it, I will certainly, be happy to share that with you.
I'd love to see it, because I'm just curious about where that one was in the 30s. I bet it would improve highly on that.
Yes,
I'm just wanting to compare the difference in the
Yes.
age group.
In the age groups, exactly. Because, you really don't expect a 6th grader to know how to apply to a college or how to pick a good college fit. So, those low numbers make sense to me.
But it's a good time for them to start.
To start, yes, absolutely.
Exactly. When you can start working with them and they can start working on that dream.
Yes.
And having that dream.
Yes, absolutely. So the Gear Up kind of slogan is dream it, plan it, do it. So, they're in the dreaming stage of it, and then we help them plan it, and then, hopefully once they graduate, they'll do it. So, anything else?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Mary, appreciate that. Next, we have the My Future NC data report. Mr. Coles will share that with us.
Yes, members of the board, you'll recall that we entered into an MOU with an organization called My Future North Carolina 2 years ago. And this is a statewide organization. Every school district in the state of North Carolina entered into an MOU with this organization. And what they're working towards is to have 2 million more North Carolinians to have a post-secondary degree or certification by the year 2030. That is the goal. And so with that, they do a lot of work with data and compiling data and kind of setting goals for school districts and community colleges and universities all across the state. It doesn't apply just to us, but I just tend to talk about the stuff that applies to K-12 because that's what we're concerned with. I have included, the report just came out, and it came out for every school district in the state. Also, as a reminder, My Future North Carolina is organized along with the North Carolina Department of Commerce. So normally, Western North Carolina, you'll hear Region 8. Well, that's because specific to K-12 education, NCDPI organizes the state into 8 regions, and the Western region is Region 8. The North Carolina Department of Commerce organizes things a little differently. So specific to that organization, we're in the Waynesville-Franklin Prosperity Zone. Okay, so that's in the top right corner. I'm just trying to make that clear. And the North Carolina map at the top, you'll see the shaded area. That is the prosperity zone that we are a part of, and you'll see Clay County in blue in the middle, well, towards the western side of that. Everyone see that? So I just want to make sure when we're talking about My Future North Carolina, it's not quite the same as Region 8, although all of the counties that are in our prosperity zone are in the west. I just wanted to highlight some things. There's all kinds of data on this form that you can look at that are of interest. But the kind of the third row, it says top opportunities for growth. My Future North Carolina looks at every school district, and they kind of set goals for areas where you can improve and hopefully have the biggest bang for your buck in the impact you can have on helping students earn post-secondary credentials. One area that they pointed out was school counselors, the counselor to student ratio. This was also an area for growth for us 2 years ago. And I just want to point out that 2 years ago in 2020, the last report we got, our school counselor to student ratio was listed as 1,274 to 1. Now, it is still an area for growth or impact for us, but you can see that our ratio now is 385 to 1. So we've made a huge amount of progress in that area. The goal for the state is 318 to 1. I'll tell you that very few school districts have a 318 to 1 ratio. I think we're very, very close, and And I think we'll meet that next year when we have one more of our student support specialists finish their degree. So I just wanted to point that out. We've made a huge amount of progress in that one. And then over to the right, transition to post-secondary. It says 54% of Clay County seniors enroll in post-secondary within 12 months of graduation, which is below the state average of 55%. It's 1% below. But I want to point out that that's lagging data. That's actually data from 2021 that this organization has. So you just heard Gear Up's data. Their data is more up to date for 2022. So our actual percentage of this is now 64%, as you saw from our Gear Up survey. So we would actually meet that goal for post-secondary, transition to post-secondary. You can move down and see the next highlighted area, how students in Clay County traditional schools are currently doing. To meet state goals each year, Clay County needs the following. So first, Clay County has met the goal for pre-K enrollment. That was one of our areas for growth in 2020. At that time, we had 52% of our students that were eligible for pre-K enrolled in pre-K. This past year in 2022, we were at 95% of our eligible pre-K students were enrolled, and the state goal was 75%. And in my opinion, there isn't anything more impactful that we could do than having as many pre-K kids, pre-K eligible kids enrolled in pre-K as possible. Because we have a fantastic pre-K program, and the more kids that can come to kindergarten already knowing their letters and their numbers and being beginning readers, the better off we're all going to be, and they're going to be. So I'm very proud of that. Now the next two areas, they have very ambitious state goals about grades 3 through 8 reading and grades 3 through 8 math. Now I also want to point out, notice that it says we would need to have 225 more 3 through 8th graders earning college and career ready scores, which is a level 4 or 5. Proficient is a 3. Okay, in order to be college and career ready, that is a higher category. Okay, essentially what that means is statistically on an EOG, a student who scores a level 3 is considered proficient by the state. That means if they took that EOG and the questions were just in a different order or whatever, and they took it 10 times, then they would pass that test at least 5 times out of 10, essentially. That's a level 3 student. In order to be a level 4 student, then that means that they would pass it, like 8 times. And to be a level 5 student, they would pass it every time. So they use a higher level of expectation of college and career ready, and also percentage. Now, I think we should be shooting for 80% proficiency. I've said that all along, but again, this goes beyond proficient. This is college and career ready. So our college and career ready percentage last year was 32% in reading and 33% in math. Now, that's not where we want to be, and it sounds low. But I also want to point out the reason why I've included in your report every other county in the Waynesville-Franklin Prosperity Zone is that we beat everybody else except Haywood County. Okay, so we're number 2 in college and career ready percentages in reading and math in grades 3 through 8 in this prosperity zone. And overall, the Western region is pretty high for the state overall. So that was the reason why you didn't just get the Clay County sheet, because I didn't want y'all looking at 32%, 33% and feeling bad about what we're doing. We want to get better, certainly, but just to understand we're beating everybody else except Haywood County. They're beating us by a little bit. And we hope to overtake them next year. But Haywood County was a top 10 school district last year. They were number 7 in the state, and we were 15th in the state. So that's who we're shooting for. We want to be number 1 in the West first, and then we want to be number 1 in the state. You can look over at school choice. That's just some information. You can see that we do serve 85% of the school-age students in Clay County. 4% go to our one private school, and then we have 11% homeschool. Underneath that, career and college preparation. Fewer than 10 high school students took at least one AP course versus 7% in our peer counties across the state. So those are counties that are in our same tier designation, which is tier 2, and roughly the same size. So you can see that in general, in rural counties all across the state, very few students take AP courses. And the reason why is because they have to take them all online, because typically rural counties, small counties, do not have locally funded teaching positions, which is what you need to be able to offer AP courses. Typically in counties like ours, we make use of Career and College Promise, and our university-bound students take community college classes, which count as the same GPA weight as AP courses. So that's the reason why when you look at that, you know, our peer county is only 7%. That's the average of their students take AP courses. But 48 graduates participated in Career and College Promise. That's 57% versus 49% in our peer counties. So we have close to 10% more participation in CCP at the community college. Because that's really been our priority. And then at the bottom, just post-secondary enrollment rates for select groups in Clay County based on 2021 data. Again, that's not 2022, 2021. I thought it was interesting to point out, you can see how much our female students overperform in post-secondary enrollment than the state average. But then you can also see how much our male students underperform in post-secondary enrollment. And I think, again, going back to what Mary said, you know, typically this is not surprising for rural counties. Rural counties tend to be more blue collar. You have more male students that typically go straight to work right out of high school. I just want to convince our boys that they can go to work straight out of high school in a higher paying job if they go ahead and earn a job certification from the community college. That's what we want them to do. You can also see that our low-income students, so our students that are free and reduced lunch, they overperform versus the state average in post-secondary enrollment. But then our students that do not qualify for free and reduced lunch, that are not low income, they underperform in enrollment based on the state average. So our wealthier students, what you would call wealthy in Clay County, don't necessarily go straight to college as much as they do across the state. And again, in a blue-collar county like this, many of those students, their parents own a business that is a successful business that is typically in a service industry. They go in and they work for their parents. They take over that business. Now, that's not going to cover all of them, but you see more of that in rural counties than you do in urban counties. So I just thought this was good information to share. And again, I included in your handout every other county so you can see where the other counties are in our prosperity zone. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Next, we have the first of our action items on the agenda, and we have the Open Way Learning presentation. We have Mr. Adam Hagler.
You'll have to introduce, I didn't know you were coming.
That's totally fine, totally fine. So first of all, Chairman Shook, Superintendent Cole, Board, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Ben Owens, and I'm the co-founder and chief engineer for Open Way Learning. You should have a packet in front of you, and I think we'll also have a slide for the audience. So let me briefly talk, if you'll click one more time. There we go. Okay. So Open Way Learning, we are a North Carolina-based nonprofit, education nonprofit that works exclusively with the K-12 schools around the country. We actually have an office here in Brasstown in Clay County as well as in Asheville. Our overall approach to the work we do is based on the model that you see in front of you here. So we primarily work at the culture level, working on what do we have to do to ensure that the strategies that we know work for students from the K-12 space, that they have the cultural aspects in place so that those strategies are implemented with fidelity and then sustain themselves over the long term, as opposed to the tendency that we see is chasing buzzword after buzzword after buzzword, and we never have something that sticks. So we focus on what can we do to ensure that long-term fidelity exists. Next slide, please. And although we are based here in North Carolina, we serve folks, we work with schools and districts around the country. And I think to the gentleman's request earlier, we are more than happy to put anyone into contact with any of these schools and districts, the leaders there. We really don't do much in the way of marketing, so everything that we do is based on word of mouth from the credibility that we are able to do. I will also say that our nonprofit is an endorsing organization for My Future NC, and so those are the types of metrics that we use to gauge the quality of the work that we do. Next slide, please. All of the work that we do is customized to focus on what that individual school and district needs that we work with. We don't do a cookie cutter approach. We use the Stanford D-School approach to design thinking, which is part and parcel to what Adam's going to talk about in a moment with this grant. That starts with empathy, understanding who our primary user is. In most cases, obviously in schools, that is our students. So we really focus on what are the students' needs, but we also include in that empathy for teachers, for administrators, for members of the community, and so forth. From that data that we gather at the empathy phase, we define what the problem is or the concern is. We develop we ideate, which is a fancy term for brainstorming, prototype solutions, and test them, rinse, repeat. And so it's an iterative process that uses that design thinking. Next slide, please. And just because that might be new to some folks, I want to give one anecdotal example of this. So what you see on the screen there is an MRI machine. Some of us have had the unfortunate experience of having to be in one of those. It's not a pleasant thing. So when the original engineers developed this, and this example is from a hospital in Boston, for a children's hospital. And it was a very traumatic experience for the children. In fact, over 85% of the children that had to get an MRI had to be sedated simply to get the results. That's not something that you want to do. You don't want to traumatize a student or a young child that you're trying to determine. So the next slide. So what the engineers did is they then went and interviewed the children. They interviewed the doctors. They interviewed the nurses. And so this is an example of how you can take something that's very clinical and shift it simply based on user data. They haven't changed the mechanics of the MRI machine. They've simply made it where it's more acceptable for students, or for using the term students, I should say children. So here they saw a dramatic reduction in the amount of kids that had to be sedated. So this is simply an example. In this case, obviously, is for MRIs, but it speaks to what undergirds all of the work that we do, which is based on empathy. We first go in and really try to understand what's happening in the community, what are the goals, what are the needs, what are the assets, and from that, let it determine what we do in the next steps. So, next slide, please. And this is one example of a tool that we use. It's called an empathy map, where we will simply either survey, as was done in the example you showed from Gear Up, or actual focus groups, where we ask students what are they saying, thinking, doing, feeling relative to their current school experience. Next slide, please. And here's an example of, this was done at the Vista Unified School District out in San Diego. And so on the left-hand side, you will see that's not some very flattering news that students are telling. And not surprisingly, students are going to be very transparent with their feelings. And so they're saying things like irrelevant, it's not enjoyable, it's difficult, it's boring. But then contrast that to the right. This was 5 years later, and this was not our organization. This was an organization we partnered with called Next Generation Learning Challenges. But they did similar type of work, focusing on what they need to do to focus on helping the students get a more meaningful learner-centered environment. And so you can see the contrast. Same survey, same approach, different results. And that's what we're aspiring to here in Clay County with this project. Okay, next example. So to back up for a moment, so what's the big picture? Why are we doing this? And I think what this image, which is simply a mosaic of images that I curated off of Google, when you search for what does the future of work look like. And so these are just images that you can see, and we use this slide all around the country to really establish why we're focusing on this. What is the big picture goal here? So I think you can look at this and see there's technology here. There is what we would call the fourth industrial revolution, where data and information is ubiquitous, and that students who don't know how to operate in that type of environment, whether they're in agriculture, whether they're in dance, whether they're in the medical field, whether they're in the military, they're going to have a difficult time. So it's imperative for us as educators to ensure that we're equipping students with the ability to thrive in this reality. And I would submit this reality exists here in Clay County. Obviously we have agriculture. Obviously we have manufacturing. Obviously we have crafts persons. And so this is not something that we can simply say, oh, it's only in Charlotte or only in Atlanta. It's right here as well. So then the question is, how do we ensure that we prepare our students? Next slide, please. And so these are images that Adam and I and our colleagues have taken ourselves from schools that we have worked with that have been on this journey and focused on what they can do differently. And so I would submit that the things you see students are doing here mirror very much what the student or what those previous images of what that future of work looked like. And so that's what we're really after here. The big why is closing that gap so that the learning is more relevant, more engaging for the students so that they're developing those skills. Next slide, please. And those skills, by the way, are not simply pie in the sky things. There's things that I noticed on the wall as I walked in here. If you're familiar with Tony Wagner's work out of Harvard, critical thinking, collaboration, accessing, analyzing information, grit. Next slide. But those are also skills that show up on the recently published North Carolina Portrait of a Graduate, which Clay County obviously had members of the overall committee that helped develop this, which also the Chamber of Commerce, the Department of Commerce, our higher education community, Best in C, all of these organizations thought, what are those things that we should aspire to? And what we would submit is, in order to ensure that those types of skills are highlighted and addressed in our schools, that we need to think differently about what we're doing. So this grant is part of that, is setting us on a journey so that we can indeed do that. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Adam to get into more detail about what this specific grant will do.
Hello everyone. Excuse me. I'm Adam Hagler, and one of the main authors of some of this work, and really excited to be here with you all today. So thanks for having us. And yeah, so key elements of the grant that, just for folks who haven't dug into the work like you did, well, thank you, for taking a long hard look at it. Are the main elements that are sort of the foundation of it are design thinking, which Ben covered a little bit, to ensure that will start the process. Like, we aren't going to, other organizations might come in and say, hey, we want to come in and do professional development for all your teachers, and this is the professional development we do, and here's how we do it, and here's the product, take it or not. We wanted to start with design thinking so that we ensure that we are customizing completely around what the actual perceived needs of the community, users at all levels, stakeholders at all levels. And as we're involved in a strategic planning process and things of that nature, it allows us to kind of tailor the approach to ensure that it's going to have a lot of political will around it. It's going to have support at all levels, whatever we do end up doing in terms of professional development and support of teachers in this process. So. And leaders. So definitely student voice is a piece of that, right? We talked about empathy and the MRI machine. That's what we're going to ensure, that students are at the table and that their voices are heard about what their experiences are, so that we can agitate on some of those metrics to get Clay County to be number one in the state in terms of what's going to get them to that next level of post-secondary attainment, what's going to get them to that next level of graduation rate, what's going to get our male students performing higher than the state average, for instance. So we can go and ask them directly, and that's what we intend to do, and are really excited to hear what ideas they come up with. community connections are something that are a part of this grant that run through it. How do we connect, if students are saying it's irrelevant, how do we take all those wonderful assets that are a part of this community and connect them? And I mean, for instance, students may have no idea about, I went to a wood shop recently that was down a gravel road that you never would have thought had a giant CNC machine in it and had a multi-million-dollar business just hanging out at the end of a gravel road that no one would know about. And so those community connections really matter, and can we connect those students in really engaging ways to do it in their schoolwork so that they feel excited, engaged, and want to take those next steps. Hands-on and experiential learning, definitely a piece of that. That's our flavor. That's how we want to sort of support this in whatever way we can, in whatever way makes sense for the community. We're not going to sort of marry ourselves to one of the different versions of that sort of big tent of experiential learning, as it were. So we want to see what's well supported in the community by teachers, by students, by parents, by community members, right? So, and then that durable skill focus, the portrait of a graduate. Another term for those are durable skills, and the Tony Wagner work. Durable skills, skills that last, that are sort of going to go with students as a toolbox into whatever their next steps are. And so that is a really, and that's counter to some other focuses that may be on just a content focus or something that's very hyper-specific. We want to focus on things like communication and critical thinking and problem solving and initiative and entrepreneurship. All things that I know there's some business owners on this board. That's probably who you're looking for, right? The people that have that durable skill, right? So that's what we're after in all of our work around the country. And then the opt-in approach is something that's, I think, also unique to us. We're not really interested in just bringing every teacher and saying, hey, we're going to train everybody in this one thing. We want opt-in. We want folks that want to work with this to work with it. And we call it the Coalition of the Willing. And those folks can then be excited and they can share what they're doing. And if other people want to jump on, great. And if they don't, if they're not ready for it, that's fine too. So that opt-in approach is something that I think is pretty unique organizationally and is in this grant. So next slide. So just as a reminder, the work we're involved in is culture work. It takes a long time. Like it's not really fast. So you'll see in the grant language reference to a phase 2. We understand that a year and a half isn't going to like completely change anyone's life overnight, right? It doesn't work like that. And those of you who have been in education a long time, you've seen that, I'm sure. So or any organization for that matter. So we just want to point out that there's this sort of phase shift that happens where traditional instruction could be the dominant paradigm at the moment, and then you start introducing this idea of learner-centered inquiry. How do we orient our classrooms? How do we orient our education around the learner? Which feels, I can tell you as a teacher, going from sage on the stage, like I am right now, into a facilitator who's out in the classroom and facilitating experiences for students to lead their learning and guide their own process. It can take some time to get to test that comfort zone. And so that's why it is a gradual shift. It doesn't all of a sudden wake up and go, yes, I'm learner-centered, and that's how I want to roll. But all the research that's come out about education in the last decades shows that learner-centered is the sort of direction we need to go if we are focused on these durable skills. And so that's kind of the sort of shift, and we want to catalyze for whoever is interested in making that shift as we do this work and find out what the real community needs are that we can sort of orient the work around. So, and then once that learner-centered mindset sort of sinks in more, and that's not to say it's not happening here already, we know it is. I'm positive of it. I've talked to enough folks in the district. I have students in the district. I get it. Like, it's happening, and we're not going to pretend it's not. So let's find those folks, and let's catalyze even more of that. And then on top of that, you can build this sort of community-facing hands-on learning at a really high-quality level. So next slide. The timeline, getting into the nitty-gritty a little bit. For those of you who haven't, this is a good sort of visual to parse out the different, because the grant is written in, it's a big narrative, right? So it can be hard to pull these things out. So we thought it might be useful for you to just have this visual that we plan to begin the strategic, if approved, hopefully the strategic plan design sprint, where we're going into the community, we're doing the empathy work that we referenced, presenting to all the schools about our organization, about what we're trying to do, seeking community members who want to be on this design steering, these community action committee, so-called, that's going to be a part of this design sprint. Who wants to be a part of that? Recruiting folks that are interested in being a part. And then learning walks to establish sort of baseline data. Learning walks are just where we go through the schools and check out, see where those bright spots are, because we know they're here. See where the bright spots are, see who's enthusiastic and already sort of pushing the edges in some of this learner-centered work that results in the durable skills. Finalizing the design sprint in April 2023, and then using some of that, using that work to inform whatever our summer, we're going to offer a summer workshop to up to 30 teachers, whoever would like to be a part of it, to sort of provide an intensive experience for them to sort of get to design some of their own units and pedagogy around this kind of work. And then in fall, we would come back and do co-design days with teachers, coming in and conducting observations and meeting with them during their planning periods and doing workshops after school for those who are interested in working with us. So we're trying to identify about 16 teachers for that phase and scale that over time as interest grows. To give you an example, in Connecticut, we worked with a school that started with 14 teachers in the summer session, and by that fall, those teachers were so excited about the work we all did that we had over 60 teachers that requested us when we went there in that following October or November, was it? So that's the kind of scale. We want to scale in that way, and as people are just word of mouth spreading their interest in this. So, and then monthly visits with the Coalition of the Willing throughout October through May, throughout the next school year. Another summer workshop with up to 30 teachers. We went from 14 to 30 in one of our other districts that we worked with from that initial summer session. So we expect that may happen. Sort of bring a friend if you're interested. And then assessing impacts and applying for funding for phase 2. Dogwood Health Trust has indicated that they could be interested in potentially funding this long term because it is such a unique project. In fact, they reached back out to us to ask if we were going to pursue, after we had an initial inquiry, they reached back out to us to fund this project. So just so y'all are aware, there was demand from the foundation to do this kind of work. And then begin phase 2, September 2024, if it looks like we're all moving in the right direction and this is a direction that Clay County is interested in continuing. So that's the basic timeline. Next slide. So yeah, questions, Q&A for anybody that's curious.
I see from the map that you have projects going all over the country. Are these projects that you have worked with and they are sort of complete and on their own, or I mean, is that the goal, that you work with a group for a certain amount of time and then they function in that method?
Adam mentioned the district in Connecticut, which I would say is as close to the work that we would do here. And we are actually we try to be very transparent up front, say we want to build local capacity so that we work ourselves out of a job. So that you have that capacity here and it's not dependent upon Ben, Adam, and our colleagues. We have other examples that are doing this type of work at a smaller scale. Again, we don't do that one-size-fits-all type approach. We go in, listen. In that case, in the district in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, they were very interested in a whole district-wide approach, but we still insisted on an opt-in with that original cohort of 14 teachers. But now we're at the point where we surpassed critical mass. We have built that local capacity in the leadership and the teachers, deep community support, and now we're essentially writing final reports and saying, okay, we've turned the keys over, you're now good to go.
So that process is going to depend on the situation of the school, so it may be
Absolutely.
1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year.
Yeah, the design process is constantly iterative. So we don't just do the empathy phase right up front. We start by listening, establishing where those bright spots are, where the community assets are, where the goals specifically are, and then we keep revisiting that. How are we doing? How are we checking in? What are the metrics that are pointing in the positive direction? What are the things that we need to work on? And where we see that we've built that capacity, we then encourage, like, okay, y'all have this, we can step away. Now, depending on the scope and the size of the district, in this case it's smaller, so we would anticipate, that this could theoretically be a 3 to 4 year type of situation. The phase one obviously is going to be that initial work, and then if we see that we're pointing in the right direction, we could apply for phase two. Did that answer your question?
Right, you did.
Other questions?
I like that it's an opt-in. I think I'm always concerned, we have that delicate balance of, I never want to just kind of increase work on our educators, and then also with our students as well. I guess, what if we go for this? Is there a certain percentage that we need to kind of gauge ourselves with on opt-ins for teachers and educators that want to participate?
We specified some numbers in the grant, specifically the 16.
Okay.
So we did commit ourselves to, and we said up to 30 for the summer. We don't know what and it'll be sort of up to Dogwood whether they feel like their investment was worth got the return they were looking for, I guess. But we're also tracking quite a few metrics that we've been in touch with Dogwood about. That was one of their follow-up questions. What metrics do you want to track? So we're going to track those metrics for the opt-in teachers, because for instance in other districts and schools that we worked with, we've seen the teachers that did opt-in had very different results.
Okay.
We've seen, for instance, in one school, 600% increase in attendance in alternative school when we implemented these things. So there are metrics that we can track that would give us an indication of the progress the teachers that are opting in are making. And then, we can't force people into it. We can introduce ourselves and introduce the process to everyone. But ultimately, you all know, if you have ever provided professional development, if people aren't into it and their passion's not there and they don't understand the why behind it, it won't take anyway. So I don't think we have the numbers that are in there are the ones that we've committed to for this first phase. But there's some other metrics we'll be tracking as well.
And is this grant for the first phase, and is that the first year or the first, what? And then what
year
happens?
And a half.
First year and a half. Okay.
Yeah, through August 2024.
And then once we get to that point, if it's rolling along, go for Dogwood, replenishes that grant and it continues on. If it's not doing well, then I guess it just.
Well, there's talk about braided funding as well, where we could have them sustain part of it, and then funds, Title IV or Title I funds could be attributed somewhat to the professional development angle of this. But we thought for the design sprint aspect of it, that it would make a lot of sense to get some funds that wouldn't make sense for a district to have those funds necessarily available for this kind of special kickoff that we find has really solid results for our partners.
Adrian, could you flip that back to the portrait of a graduate slide, please?
Yes. So I did want to share, this is the reason why I put my name on this presentation too. You'll see the skills that the Portrait of a Graduate project statewide came up with. Adaptability, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, learner's mindset, empathy, and personal responsibility. I just want to be clear that 0% of the existing multiple choice exams that we use in the state of North Carolina to measure student learning and preparedness for the workforce measures any of that. None of that. And so the fact is, we do multiple choice tests for EOGs and EOCs because it's the cheapest way to do it, not because it's the best way to measure what we want. There's a reason why DPI, and I think the General Assembly behind the scenes is involved right now with a push. I have shared with the board and with the district as a whole that they are looking at reworking how we do school grades in North Carolina. And the reason why is because they're looking at that. And they're coming to the realization that I just explained to you, that we don't currently measure any of that. So if that's really what's important, I happen to think that it is, because those are the skills that you can take with you to any job you have in America, or honestly, globally. And so I think we're going to have a change in mindset on how we measure, well, first of all, what we want our students to learn while they're in school, and then how we measure it so we can figure out if we're successful or not. That work has already started at the state level. I want to, I've told y'all before, I'm kind of a get out in front of it sort of guy. I can see this coming, and I would prefer not to be playing catch up. I would prefer to kind of be getting ready. That's what this is about. That's the reason why I would like to do it. Now, obviously, it's up to the board, but that's the reason why we have 5 design sprints kind of scheduled where we're going to invite members of the community. I mean, I'm going to invite everybody in the Chamber of Commerce, our business owners that are in our CTE advisory council that we have right now, members of the community that have been very involved in sharing their thoughts on what our students should be learning, that we're interested in a Clay County portrait of a graduate. I think as we talk about that, when we talk about building our teachers' desire to make an instructional change that will be necessary to teach these skills, part of convincing them that that is necessary is hearing from community members and business owners and students that, hey, this is what we want to learn. And I'm not saying that what our teachers have been doing for years is wrong. It's not. What they've been doing aligns with what is necessary to do well on a multiple choice test. I'm just saying we don't have to just do that. We can do both. And so, but it requires a change in how we do instruction in our classrooms. And so I really kind of want to, I don't want to be the one standing there telling everybody they're going to have to do this. I would prefer that they hear from members of the community and students and look at research and come to that realization on their own. And then maybe we get a coalition of the willing, 16 teachers or more, and they talk about, okay, what's one change we can make in how we teach students that'll kind of get us down this path? And you guys help us with that. And let's see how it goes. And if that's successful, then we'll do something else. But I think we've got to move things towards how do we teach kids these skills while also preparing them to do well on their state and, of course, exams. And how can we get back to making learning fun? It should be fun. And they should be able to adapt what they're learning in their community. Because that's, teenagers like to feel like they're making a difference. So let's find avenues to be able to do that. So I want to kind of get towards that without it feeling like I'm the one that's trying to drive it. I want them to come to that realization themselves. So that's kind of the reason why I was interested in this partnership. So I just wanted to share that before you had any further questions.
Technically, no, but I guess go ahead.
Much of my career was spent looking at technologies developed for one thing to use them for something different. And very oftentimes, something like that occurs to something millions of dollars is spent, especially by the government. And they show up out in the field with Joe Bag of Donuts, field operator who can't use it because he's got gloves on. Gee, nobody ever thought of that. And I don't know if you are going to be the guy from Brasstown that's here conducting the operations, but the way these gentlemen presented their approach, they are pulling from us in the community to look at the work, and you know that I'm the suspicious one. I always look and do my research, and that's what I do at 4 o'clock in the morning. But they are pulling from us how to interpret what the state or what whoever develops, pulling that from the community. What does this mean to you? It's one thing to say something, it's something very different. Instead of what you say, what you mean. Very different things. And these gentlemen are orchestrating, as presented, pulling from the community. What does this mean to you guys? And what can we do to make that work for us? Not for Raleigh, not to somebody else, but what does it mean to Clay County? And I thought that was a brilliant presentation. And that makes me happy. I'm not on board, but I'm Joe Bag of Donuts from the field, and it makes me happy. And I thought their approach to drag that and solicit that willingly, I like the coalition of the willing idea, from the community as to really what does it mean to Clay County? And Bill, you're right. These are all our kids. and how can we make them better people in the world? So thank you for the presentation, thank you for letting me speak, but if I was on the board,
I owe you a bag of donuts.
Mr. Caldwell, you had a question.
And it's not approaching a 5-year program. There are plenty of off-ramps, and knowing that there's going to be a bunch of Joe Bag of Donuts who want to be participants in this, whether they're teachers, and I'm not in the school system, but the impression that I get from the staff, just from sitting in the meeting and knowing what's going on and hearing what's going on, there's going to be more than enough enthusiasm to be a part of this whole enterprise. So, sorry for butting in. I hope they'll let me come back. But I really wanted to add my 2 cents to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I was going to talk about the stakeholders and the students' involvement, but Mr. Rose, you just said it perfectly, so thank you. And seriously, thank you. I see this as only accommodating and helping our school improvement plan. Am I am I on the right track with that, where
yes,
it could just be a great help to items that we're trying to improve on? I'm sure you do, but if we approve this as a board, how often do we get updates? How are we going to know?
I mean, you let us know. The good news is, you know, I own a home here in Browstown, as does Adam, so we are here. And we, you know, a day's notice, we can be here prepared to give you. And we will be radically candid with how it's going. We're not going to try to sugarcoat anything. We're going to tell you exactly what we're seeing, where we can improve, or, as the gentleman indicated, where we need to take an off-ramp if this is simply not working. Our intent is to ensure that it does very well align with the strategic plan that you have developed, that you are in the process of revising, and is going to be informed deeply by the voices from our community and from our students. And that's what we will help to facilitate. But if we're getting off track and those reports indicate that there's a better option out there, then we're willing to be candid about that and look for it.
The board gets an update whenever the board wants an update. So that's a simple answer. The second thing is, yes, there are off-ramps. And honestly, if we get to the end of this first grant cycle and the interest isn't there, then we won't apply for a new grant, and that'll be the end of kind of this method of it. And then third, I would say, yes, if you look at our current strategic plan, which is 21 to 2026, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of nuts and bolts kind of work. What you don't see a lot of is specific to curriculum and instruction. And that's because we had to get these things in place first. But based on the green squares, you can see, or green circles, you can see that we're getting a lot of that in place. It's not going to take us until 2026 to get those things in place. So part of this is starting to get the work going on, okay, next step is in the classroom in how we instruct students. How will that change in order to meet these needs? That's what we're getting at. And it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, you're talking, again, a 3 to 5 year process to make that happen. Because writing a high quality unit that's like a project-based unit of instruction, that's not easy. So, we have to support our teachers in that. But if that's the direction that we as a community feel like we need to go to prepare our students, and our students want that kind of instruction, and I think it's incumbent on us as educators to make that happen. So that's what this is about.
I think you explained it well for this. I think that's where my brain has had a hard time connecting, is like teaching for these answers on these end of grade and end of course testing, and how to reach these goals that we came up with for a portrait of a graduate, or not goals, but I think that's been the hard connection for me. And so this seems like it's that just kind of that middle ground for us to kind of help us mold into that kind of thinking and learning and teaching.
Sort of the best and most used method for preparing kids to do well on a multiple choice test is what we affectionately call drill and kill, which is highly effective to a certain extent in preparing kids to do well on a multiple choice test. But when you get to a certain point, it turns kids off because it is not fun. It is not engaging, and you can drill and kill facts without having any application to the real world. And so what we're talking about is learning will be more fun and more engaging for high school students, for sure, if they see how that learning can apply in their community or in the state. That is harder to prepare for as a teacher, but the end result, I think, is a lot better for our end user, which is the student. So
I'll also add that the both and aspect of what Mr. Cole said is right on. The evidence for these approaches that we endorse, that are like instructionally, is that you'll see gains on these multiple choice tests, despite not emphasizing the test.
Yeah.
It's this sort of magical, it's this magical unicorn land of how that works. It's not that linear approach of the drill and kill. Like, I'm going to teach you this question, and this is the answer. Question answer. It's this meandering path of sort of experiential, hands-on, engaging, making a difference, arts integration, things of that nature, that all lead to not only developing these skills, but also knocking the top off a test. Because this is way harder than tests. If kids can think really well, if you're focusing on, I need you to be able to apply everything, all this content knowledge that I'm teaching you, you're focused on that, that's actually a much higher depth of knowledge than it requires to regurgitate answers on a test, right? So that's, we go for those higher order thinking skills, and then the test scores are a lagging indicator of that.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Well, if not, we've heard the presentation from Mr. Owens and Mr. Hagan. Thank you, guys. So I would entertain any motion to approve this partnership with Open Way Learning. It's funded through the Dogwood Health Trust.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Crawford's making a motion. Is there a second to that? Mr. Caldwell seconds. All in favor? Thank you. Next, we have our recommendation to approve the MOU with Mountain Projects Incorporated. And that's Ms. Lori Ross.
Yes, you all have seen me before. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lori Ross. I work for Mountain Projects as a substance misuse preventionist, and I also do trauma-informed communities education, Prime for Life education, and that sort of thing. So I'm here tonight because Mountain Projects Prevention Team, Mountain Strong, is going to hopefully do the survey again that we did last year. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about the survey background, mainly for the public, because the name of the survey is a Pride survey, and there has been some comments in the last few years about that. But it was started in the late 1970s, so it's been around for 40-something years, long before Pride meant anything else to anyone, really. It was a way to engage parents in the fight to end substance misuse and abuse and use. And Pride originally stood for the Parents Resource Institute for Drug Education. So they just shortened it to the word Pride, and that's what it's been called ever since, the Pride survey. It's a key component. It was a key component of the Reagan administration's Just Say No campaign. Some of y'all probably remember that. Nancy Reagan was very active in that, and they all brought international attention to substance abuse facing youth worldwide with that campaign. The First Lady attended a lot of the annual Pride conferences, and she brought other First Ladies with her on some occasions. Pride conferences had tens of thousands of attendees in the 80s and 90s. And once again, that's Pride, Parents Resource Institute for Drug Education, before the nonprofit split from the survey arm of the organization and now formed Pride Surveys, which is the survey I'm going to tell you about. So these are really more school and community climate surveys now than they used to be. They're totally anonymous. Questions range from what perception of harm for various substances. I think you have a sample sheet, each of you should have. Perception of your parents' disapproval to where do you feel safest? How often do you ride in a car with someone who has used alcohol? That's just some of the questions. There are also things like, when do you use substances and where do you get them? And it names the substance: marijuana, opioids, cigarettes, e-cigs, tobacco. And if they use them, it asks where they use them, where they get them. So our Mountain Strong Prevention Team at Mountain Projects paid for surveys at Clay County schools in May of 2022, and we also bought them in 2019. I also have surveys from 2005, 2006, 2007, back when they were doing them with the paper bubbles and the number 2 sharpened pencil. We have the collected data from back then. It was collected on the computer, but they did it that way. But it's all done on the computer now. It can be done by paper if you want, but typically we don't do it that way. And I will remind you, it is totally anonymous. So grades 7, 9, and 11 were surveyed in the last 2 times we did it, 2019 and in early 2022. There were 219 respondents for the 2022 survey in May. And some good indicators that occurred in that were 74% of Hayesville 7th graders believe e-cigs are harmful. About 80% of our students believe prescription drugs can be harmful. And the percentage is about the same for cigarettes. The large majority of all students surveyed say substances like alcohol, tobacco, e-cigs, and opioids are hard to get. This is all Clay County students. That's the most majority of them. I'm not going to be able to go over all the survey results right now because it would take quite a bit of time, but I'll be glad to do that another time if you want me to. And I'm trying to get together a comparison of the 2019 and 2022 early 2000 data. But we are asking for comparative data if you allow us to do this survey again. In the spring, we're going to ask the Pride Company to do a data analysis for us so that we don't have to do it ourselves. And I can present that once I have it too. Pride surveys have been used in over 74,000 schools around the country to help make positive changes, and they show data reflecting the changes if the schools continue to do the surveys because they have the comparative analysis. The benefits of conducting these student surveys are many. Most schools administering the questionnaires, whether they're student surveys or surveys meant for teachers or parents, because they do have those also, are commended for taking an open, evidence-based approach to reform. The surveys can help develop meaningful goals and objectives. Our prevention team uses survey data as part of our regular needs assessments in the counties where we work. And I didn't mention that, but my team covers all 7 western counties and the Qualla boundary. I primarily work in Macon, Cherokee, and Clay County. Clay County is where I live, so this is where my passion is, and that's why you all see me so much. And my office is here too. The surveys also help plan and evaluate programs and create a positive public image. And here's some examples. Using Pride student survey data, Ohio policymakers noticed a troubling increase in inhalant usage, and I know everyone is noticing that. All schools. They knew they needed to decrease the use of inhalants, so a successful anti-inhalant campaign was launched, and Ohio was able to target its objectives by creating age-specific strategies. Upon conducting statewide follow-up student surveys, they discovered inhalant use had been reduced and their goals were met, and they were able to compare it to find out that happened. So by asking questions on school safety, bullying, student-teacher relationships, student engagement, teacher support, instructional leadership, and a lot of other important issues, conducting student surveys can help schools develop and meet significant objectives for particular schools. I apologize, my voice is scratchy. I realized my throat was really dry when I got here and I didn't bring water. So many schools use parent, facility, and student surveys to identify strengths and weaknesses they might not otherwise see within the school. Excuse me. This data allows them to zero in on the problems. Thank you. And plan accordingly with programs to create positive school changes, and they can continue conducting surveys to evaluate program effectiveness. Thank you, Ms. Beck. With these surveys, you may implement nationwide school programs, and some of the surveys comply with the 4 core measures for drug-free communities programs, and they comply with all STOP Act grantee programs, and those may not mean anything to you all, but us in the prevention world, they do. The current survey also has some post-COVID questions, which are helpful for acquiring some funding related to COVID, and there still is quite a bit of that out there. School surveys can help create a positive public image by collecting data about the perceptions of their school, and then administrators can use it as a valuable resource for public relations. And here's an example of that. When Jonesboro, Arkansas was attacked by the national media following a tragic shooting in their schools, local educators used student pride survey data they had already collected, and it showed Jonesboro students were less likely than other U.S. students pretty much anywhere in the country to carry guns to school or threaten other students and be hurt at school. So school administrators were able to prove the shooting was an unpredictable departure from the norm. And this helped heal their public image after the incident. It didn't change what had happened, but it helped heal the school image, which we know is really important today. So this is just kind of a synopsis of how the survey data may be helpful to Clay County schools. We are paying for it. Mountain Projects has a grant to pay for it. And I remind you again, it's totally anonymous. They did 219 students in May 2022, and it was about 56% male. Once again, at 7th, 9th, and 11th grade, we can have 5th grade, but we typically have only surveyed those 3 grades. And then we will compare it just to see what's changed, if any usage rates have gone up or down. And the only thing we would ask this year, if you approve it for us, is that we're able to do a little bit earlier. Our block grant funding for this particular cycle has a really weird timeline this time, and it's March 15th, which means we have to have our reporting in by March 25th, I think. And we don't have to give them the results, we just need to say, yes, we had this done. We're doing it for some other counties too. So last year we did it in May, we would like to have it done earlier.
So members of the board, we can make that timeline happen. And just since we have done this in the past, it's been very helpful to our partners that help us meet the needs of our students that better allow them to actively engage in their academic work. So I would recommend that you approve this.
Any questions or comments about that?
I would like to be able to see a copy of it at some point.
It's pretty big, but you can see a copy anyway, yes. You mean the survey they do or the
just
results?
The survey they do.
Okay, I can get that to you.
Yeah, thank you. Just so we have a copy that we can pass around. At some
You can
point.
provide some 5 copies or a
Yes,
digital.
I can send those to you,
Right,
yes.
thank
Email
you.
me a digital copy and I can forward it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, if no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion that we enter into that MOU with Mountain Projects again for the survey.
Would you tell us one more time what the an acronym means?
It means, I wrote it down this time because it's Parents Resource Institute for Drug Education. I used to know it off the top of my head and then I don't have to say it for years and I forget. So.
Is there a motion that we,
I make a motion that we approve.
Ms. Beck, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Ms. Crawford, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Ross, would you like to take a signed copy?
Absolutely.
Thanks, the 19th.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
So, yeah, if you've noticed, Mr. Cole and I have been checking on our phones up here. We've been getting updates from the gym with Mr. Overland. Tonight, they are doing the presentation for the high school basketball team with the state championship banner tonight. So we are at the point that that's getting ready to happen, hopefully within the next couple of minutes. So I think it would be nice if we could go down there as a board. So I would suggest possibly taking a recess if we could for just a couple of minutes to walk down and do that presentation, and then we'll run back up here real quick.
I'll make a motion to recess temporarily to participate.
Recess.
Mr. Jones, second that. All in favor? Thank you.
So we just need to head on down there.
So the board will return after the state championship banner presentation. Mr. Cox said it will take about 5 minutes. They're doing it between the girls and boys basketball game. And then we'll come back and re-enter the meeting.
Very good. All right, thank you for doing the recess, and I'll entertain a motion that we go back into open session.
Make a motion.
Mr. Caldwell, Ms. Beck,
I
second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have a report on the new school building plan and options. Mr. Cole is going to do that, and we have Jonathan is here in the back with us as well in case there's any questions. He's from LS3P. Got that right? Yeah.
Yes, members of the board, we do have Jonathan Kapp, our project manager for the new Hayesville Intermediate School project. He was nice enough to drive out from Asheville today or this evening just to be available to answer any questions. So that's pretty good customer service on LS3P's part. So I want to thank him for doing that. I will try to answer questions as well. Adrian, are you ready yet there you go. All right, so very quick, what I've included are 3 slides, and members of the board, in your handout, you have these 3 slides in your packet. Essentially, the update is question number 1, the existing Hayesville Middle School. The point came up that you can never have enough gym space, which is true. Certainly when we share our sports facilities with the community as much as we do, there are always teams looking for places to practice. And the more available space we have, we could kind of do our best to centralize community use in the old Hayesville Middle School gym so that we would have less wear and tear on these school gyms. That's one way we could handle it. Initially, with that proposal of keeping the old middle school gym as we build the new school, I had 3 concerns. One is the building itself. That is currently, after the auditorium is demoed, the middle school gym will be the oldest building we have on our campus. It was built in 1954. There's a lot of crumbling in the bricks on the exterior, which aren't a structural problem, but eventually it will become a safety issue because those cracks are coming because water is getting in behind the bricks and between the structure and the bricks. Then of course it freezes in the wintertime, which cracks the bricks, and it's just going to get worse over time. We're going to get to a point where pieces of the bricks are going to start falling down and it can hit somebody in the head. It's going to be a safety issue. So I think the point I wanted to make was if we're going to keep the gym, 1, we need to do some work on the exterior of it to fix that future safety issue. 2, in the spring and the fall when it's hot, we can't close the doors when the kids are in there to secure it from any danger of gunmen or anything else because it doesn't have air conditioning and it gets too hot to keep the doors shut and locked for most of the spring and the fall. And certainly I understand most people think about when you say safety at a school, they think you're talking about fire and people with guns. But forcing kids to do physical education in a gym with no air conditioning in 95-degree heat is also a safety issue. We don't need kids having heat stroke out here pushing themselves in the gym. So it's going to need air conditioning. I've already quoted it out. We can air condition that gym. It's going to cost about $80,000 to do it. The boiler that is in that gym is the oldest boiler we have on campus. It was just down for 3 weeks this past month because you can't buy parts for it anymore. Anytime something breaks, you have to get them handmade in New York and shipped down here. And then Steve Livers, our maintenance and HVAC technician, has to install it. We're also trying to move all of our boilers to electric boilers. That's a fuel oil boiler. Obviously, fuel oil prices have been wildly up and down over the last 3 years. Electrical prices have been much more steady and easier to plan for. So as we've replaced boilers, we've replaced them with electric boilers because we want to get away from water pipes, steam pipes, buying fuel oil. We want to get away from all that and just go electric. So those are 3 things that if we're going to keep that gym, I want the commissioners to be aware of that either need to be paid for out of local funds or out of this grant. The last part of that was if we were going to keep it, With the new school, we still have to have an entrance where an 18-wheeler can access the loading dock at the new cafeteria kitchen. Because our food comes to us every Tuesday on an 18-wheeler, and we've got to have an area that's accessible to an 18-wheeler where they can turn around and get in and out. I wasn't initially sure if they could get in this, but we've since looked at that, and we feel positive that it can. So that makes keeping the old middle school gym an option if we're willing to put the funds into it to be able to air condition it, put a new boiler in it, fix the veneer of the bricks so that we don't have a future bad safety issue, and then I think we'll be good to go. So that was one big question that had to be answered by the subcommittee and with the commissioner's help. The next thing is a performing arts center / auditorium. I'm going to refer to it as an auditorium. Our current auditorium, I'm glad we have it, but it's not a great place for performances. The seats are hard, the tile is asbestos, the acoustics are not very good. Anyone that attended the chorus concerts and the music makers, our kids do such a wonderful job, our teachers do such a wonderful job. It would be great if we could hear what they were saying better. And there's just no substitute for design when it comes to an auditorium or performing arts center. What we have are three options. So the first option is this first slide. You'll see there's a central hub building, which is where the offices would be, media center, and some classrooms. Then you see a 3 through 5 building, and then a 6 through 8 building. All three of these buildings are 2 stories. Okay? The question is, we would love, the ultimate goal would be to build a new school that can meet the needs of grades 3 through 8, that would provide a new competition gym, and that would also provide a nice performing arts center for our band and chorus students, and for the community to be able to use as well, for whatever events may come up in the community that we could share the facility with, as well as keeping the old middle school gym as an additional gym. That would be like pie in the sky, okay, for everything that I think is attainable. This first slide, look down in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see Scheme 1, new construction, 2-story classroom building, new 3-5 wing, 25,739 square feet. New 6-8 wing, 22,939 square feet. 2-story hub building with auditorium and cafeteria, 45,276 square feet, for a total of 93,954 square feet. It would include repairs to the exterior veneer on the existing middle school gym, so the old gym would get the updates that it needed on the outside, and then the accompanying site improvements, grading, utilities, traffic circle, parking, landscaping. So what you'll notice there is there's no mention of a new gym. So in this slide, in the hub building, we do not have a gym. We have an auditorium, okay? So that would be a performing arts center with no additional gym, but then we would do the repairs to our existing middle school gym, and that's where PE would be, and that's where our competition, our games would be. Now, in this plan, we are confident that we could carry this out with our $40 million grant with no local funds. Okay, so that would give us an auditorium. We would update our existing gym. We would not have an additional gym. Okay? But that's what we feel confident we can do in today's prices with just the $40 million grant and no local funds. Everybody clear on that? Mm-hmm. All right. Flip over. The second slide. Now these look exactly the same. So the difference is in the plan. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner again, you'll see the same exact numbers and information, but the difference is, in the middle it says a 2-story hub building with an auditorium, an auxiliary gym, and a cafeteria. The total square footage then goes up to 104,664 square feet. Now, an auxiliary gym is not a competition gym. It would not have a competition-sized basketball court. it might not even have a maple wood floor. It might have more of a composite floor. We would deal with that in the design phase. But the point is, it would not be a full competition gym. It would be a smaller gym space where we would have locker rooms for the kids to change clothes, and we could do PE, but there would be no bleachers, there would be no scoreboard, none of that. It's an auxiliary gym. So we would still have all of our games, competitions in the middle school gym, and it does still include the site improvements to the existing middle school gym. Okay, so we haven't gotten all of this completely priced out yet, but we're thinking to go this route. We're looking at needing local funds somewhere up to maybe $3 to $4 million. Okay, which is about what the local funding was that was kicked in on the primary school. I think it was $3.6 million in local funds for the primary school. Now, third and last slide is the everything slide. So with that one, we have a 2-story hub building with a competition gym, which would be bleachers, scoreboards, the whole thing, a cafeteria, as well as an exterior auditorium that you can see we've located across Yellow Jacket Drive on the corner, right over here. So we could do a crosswalk when we demo the middle school, and we create this big parking lot for the 3 through 8 school. For events at night, people could park in that same parking lot across Yellow Jacket Drive to enter the auditorium. It also includes keeping the old gym and the exterior work that we wanted to be able to do for that. Now with that, I think you're looking at $5+ million local funds to be able to do that. Now, I'm not going to give you that in writing. Jonathan and I have looked at that, and obviously that changes every day, but I just want to kind of give people a general idea of what we're talking about, to be able to do these different options. Now I say 5+. I mean, I would say somewhere 5 to 7 million to do that.
I see that the architect has changed the design pretty much, quite a bit compared to, first let's go over. You got the 2 buildings now separated, 6 through 8, 3 through 5th, and at one time it's like a big open area where it was glamorous or whatever you want to say. Now we just have 2 buildings, both of them 2 stories.
All of them are 2 stories.
Okay. And so you change that. The hub building is going to be on the 3rd page, if I'm understanding. I see we have an auditorium, of course, right back here. Hub building is going to be cafeteria, and what else in it?
The hub building is going to be, the bottom floor will be the cafeteria kitchen. It'll be, if you're talking about the 3rd slide, it would be a
3rd page.
It would be a competition gym with bleachers. It would be the principal, the administrative offices, the counselor's offices, some smaller classrooms for like exceptional children classrooms, if I remember correctly. And then the upstairs would be the media center, the 3 through 5 and 6A art rooms adjoining one another with a kiln room and storage room in between them. That's what the hub building would be.
Okay, I can't remember. So any of these grades will have to go outside, walk down the walkway into the hub building to get to the media center and cafeteria.
If we don't do enclosed walkways, yes, they would. But the way the buildings are built, it kind of hides the students a lot better than they are right now because there's not this huge open courtyard in the middle.
Right. Why did they change
the offset of the
building?
I
Offsets.
can explain.
Safety issue or this cheaper?
Yeah, what it helps us do, and it's, well, one is, the first thing I want to say, we're still, we want to still include that canopy that encloses space in between the buildings. So that's just, it's not represented on this drawing, but that from that original design, we're still going to hold true to that idea that in between the 2 the two classroom wings, there would be enclosed exterior space.
The area you were talking about, Mr. Jones, of the outdoor classroom that is in this other slide.
Yeah, I know, I understand about the canopy and all that. And you say you're going to do that or not?
It's just not represented on this site plan, but yeah, we're intending to keep some of that enclosure between those two classroom wings.
Okay, why the reason for offsetting again?
That's a very straightforward reason, is when we offset those two buildings, it allows us to get all the development into that corner of the property. And if we can do that, then we can actually build all those three buildings in one phase rather than in two separate phases. So if we slide that 6 through 8 building farther down on the page, plan south, it gets laid right over the road for the back of the cafeteria. And then we create ourselves a really large problem on how do we continue to do food service during construction, and it will extend the project out probably another building cycle, which in this atmosphere, usually I'd say 12 to 18 months. Now I'd say 18 to 24 months right now. So it saves us a lot of money if we can get all those buildings into one corner.
Right, I understand that, but the offset saying, I understand you saying when you got to squeeze it in, but I'm not seeing it because you've still got the same length unless there's something about the driveway pulling up there as far as letting off. I'm not hardly grasping that.
If they move it up to where it's even with, make sure, and I hope I'm saying this right.
Both of them even going straight, okay?
They're going to be too close to the existing cafeteria to still get trucks and stuff in there. Which the existing cafeteria you can't see on this plan. It's not on there, but that's going to put them too close to the existing cafeteria to get the food trucks in to still use the cafeteria. So they're going to have to wait until they build the new cafeteria to build that second building.
And what we're trying to do is be able to build
all of it at one time.
Okay.
Let me ask a quick question about this grant. I thought and this is just me, I thought we couldn't use this grant money to fix older buildings. Why was I thinking that? I thought it was only on new construction.
No, we can use these grant monies for anything that we need to finish the entire project to serve our kids. So for example, after we were done building the primary school, when we demoed the old elementary building because we no longer needed it and we wanted to repave the entire bus lot, we paid for that out of the school grant funds because that school and the need for it was impacted by the building of the new school, and we had those funds left over at the grant.
Yeah, but this grant, like I said, I thought it was specific to new construction. That's why I was concerned about repairing the old school, middle school gym.
No, we can use grant funds to be able to do that.
This specific.
And even if we run out, we have R&R funds that were allocated by the state over the last 2 years that we could use towards that.
Okay.
We just can't apply for renovation, I guess is what we can't make an additional application.
Right.
Yeah, I just thought once we got that one, we couldn't use that for, but I guess we can.
I ain't going back, but this is not fitting in my mind from the building part on the canopy. How wide did you say? I think I heard you say 6 to 8 feet wide canopy in the middle of the two. Is that the distance between the two buildings?
No, they're farther apart. I mean, that image that's sitting on the floor is sort of it would be still representative of what we're imagining. So they're probably 30 to 35 feet apart, about the width of a classroom.
These two buildings be 30-some feet apart.
Yes.
And when are you gonna have it sticking out towards? Evidently, you're not, correct? As far as sticking, you know how you got your driveway there, or the parking area when you're letting off or on the road coming up top of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have walkways going in between the two, but I don't see where the canopy would be. Would it be where the two corners like this here are you gonna start the canopy right here and come back this way somewhere now? Because you ain't gonna put it coming up this driveway like this, correct?
Correct, yeah, we're not gonna cover over the drive. It'll be between the two buildings. It will probably be the length of the short end of the first building.
And I just want to say, tonight, that is down the road as far as design.
Okay, well, I'm just still trying to see whether, it's just not, I'm not piecing it in my brain as far as, I'm not seeing what, when I look at that picture, absolutely, I cannot see that in this, the way it is right now.
Well, there's going to be an outdoor classroom, in my mind, in between those two buildings. Now those two buildings are just offset. So that outdoor classroom could be right there next to the 6-8 building in the picture on the top corner where you see that brown sidewalk. It could be right there. Now, we're not going to commit to that exactly right now because that's a little further down. What I want people to understand is the big question that we have to answer first, that I want the public to have the opportunity to have some input in before a decision is made, is that what do we want to see as far as the end result of this school? I want people to understand the options that we have. Slide one being, if we do an auditorium in the place of a competition gym in the new school, we do the upgrades to the old middle school gym. We can do that and stay within the $40 million budget of the grant. But we will not have a new gym in the new school. Option number two is going to require some additional local funds on top of the grant. And that would be to have an auditorium, a smaller auxiliary gym that is not a competition gym, and repairing the old gym, which we're saying could be somewhere $3 to $4 million in local funds to be able to do that. And if we want to have a competition gym with bleachers and a separate performing arts auditorium across the street that's really nice for our band and chorus kids, as well as the upgrades to the old middle school gym, now we're going to be in the $5 million plus range as far as local funds. That's what we're saying right now based on current prices. Now, obviously those could go down, but I want to give people a general idea of what we're talking about and then give them the opportunity to come and speak before the board and just share their thoughts. So as far as like the outdoor classroom and all that, those are future conversations. We feel like before we move forward in the design process, this big question has to be answered. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And on our part, we are currently we have a partner who's going to help do cost estimating through the whole process. They're currently chewing on this. So just between, I think last week when we had our meeting, and this, they've gotten started on it, but they weren't at a place where we can get numbers.
And once we get some numbers, we will share those with the Board of Education as well as the county commissioners. So they'll have a little more exact numbers to be looking at. I just thought, the county commissioners are going to meet on the 5th. It would be nice if we put this information out there and allow people to come in maybe on January 4th for a special called meeting of the board to just hear anybody from the public that wants to give input on what they think the commissioners and the Board of Education should do moving forward with our plans for this new school. Did anyone have any further questions for Jonathan about kind of those options?
I mean, regardless of our auditorium, whether it's inside this hub or externally, I mean, we're thinking it'll still kind of have the same seat capacity and
So
I just want to make sure we have a good facility for
what we're
performing
doing is
arts.
we're replacing any facility we need to take down, right? And whether it's taken down because it's in a place that impedes the new development or whether it just has reached the end of its life.
Mm-hmm.
In all cases, it's both of these things in this design. I know how many seats you have in your gym. I know how many seats you have in your auditorium. I'm trying to increase in a scale that doesn't increase the budget to a much greater scale, but you have 456 seats in your auditorium. So I'm aiming for around 500. we're aiming to seat, if we do a new competition gym, we'll aim to seat the whole student body, so around 700. Classrooms, we're adding some additional capacity in number of classrooms. So while we're not building something, we're building what's in line with what we think is responsible for future growth, but not enormous. But yeah, replacing with better, replacing sort of in kind, but with an additional capacity.
And Jonathan, I think when we talked last at the subcommittee meeting, the idea of getting the auditorium into that space and keeping the middle school gym was just not possible in terms of space size, correct?
To get a separate auditorium building as well as keeping the existing gym is going to impede on any open space, which is really important, obviously, to the kids. Right. So it'll be.
So if that is done totally, it'll have to be a separate building, like in this third.
Say that across the street looks like a really great option for an additional building, and you know, it could go a different way. I mean, we could choose to option one, and then in 5 years the district could choose to build a gym building across on that property. You know, I mean, I think it could go a lot of different ways, but I think, you know, what we heard clearly was we want to serve all the kids well, so serve those arts programs really well. We want to serve the athletics and the gym use, which is everyday gym use, really well. And we felt like these were three options that each one of them, I think, does serve those things well.
Thank you.
Square footage on the old auditorium, do you know it? Maybe
I think it's around 7,000. I think it's less than 7,000 square feet.
And the new one that you would put over here?
The new one is about 14,000. And there's two things that drive it. One, it just needs to be bigger. The stage is super small, but we have to provide a lot more toilets than our in.
Nothing about the current auditorium meets code. Nothing.
Yeah.
So,
well, it was only built in dark ages.
I know that sounds like a lot more square footage, but all we're trying to build is something that will meet code.
Yeah.
And
it could be a little smaller. I mean, this is really early in design, so what I expect to do is we make these big picture choices, and that allows us to dig in on the smaller details and then put those plans in front of groups of people that Dale and I have talked with, and then we start refining the design. So.
Well, this auditorium, have you got it kind of in mind that is it going to be this flat, or are you going to have it angled looking down? I mean, have you got that far? Maybe I'm asking too quick.
Yeah, I have.
Please forgive me if I'm just, you know.
It's gonna be something that is angled, and it probably is gonna be quite a bit steeper than what you guys have now. That will allow us to get a lot more seats in a smaller footprint.
It'll be stadium seating. It'll have to be to get in that amount of seating in that footprint.
Yeah.
And the pods that we have down there, that area, I know they're supposed to go, but
that's going to be
the
new bus parking lot.
The new bus park. Okay, well that just got me an answer there, because we're seeing different stuff, and I just want to know what I'm.
Everything is a choice, because initially we had planned to demo the old middle school gym. Part of that space was going to be additional staff parking for the high school, which would generate additional student parking for the high school in the back. And then the other part of it, once we demoed the old cafeteria, was going to be a curving bus parking lot so that all 21 buses could park side by side. I will tell you, in this plan, that's 17 bus parking spaces, not 21.
It'll be very similar bus loading to what you guys do now. Is what we'll.
So we'll kind of have to take 3 buses and sort of park on the corners. We can make it work just like we're doing right now. But before, when we were going to demo the middle school gym, that bus parking lot was going to curve around towards the middle school gym so that we would have 21 bus parking spaces. So, you know, like every choice we make, when you're trying to build all this on the same footprint, you got to make choices. And every choice has a different price.
and one nice thing, and there's part of me that hates the idea of getting rid of the old gym, but at the same time, just walking from here to the game a few minutes ago when we recessed, there's people parking all over the bank, all over the sidewalks, in
Yes.
parking spots that are not lined. I mean, obviously parking is a huge issue when it comes to events,
Yes.
whether it be a ball game event. And the same thing happens when we're having choral concerts or band concerts. It's the same issue.
Graduation.
When we bought this land on the corner over here, I've kind of had it in my mind that either is going to be additional parking in the future, or we were going to put an auditorium over there, just kind of all along. And I haven't done anything with it because I wanted to kind of get to this point where a decision is made, and then we'll know. But you're right. I mean, parking is an issue. So, but I don't want to turn that into a parking lot until I know that, you know, how we want to use it in the future. So yeah, so the point of this tonight was just to kind of share those three big picture slides, and sort of the options and the ballpark price estimates. We'll get a little more specific later. But then I'm recommending that the board approve a special called meeting on January 4th, I believe, or the 3rd. So the 3rd is on a Tuesday night. So we could do the 4th, which is on a Wednesday night. I think there's a ball game scheduled for a Tuesday night. That's up to the board. But I think it would be nice if you had it. I'm going to be out of town on the 2nd. I won't be back until the 3rd. But I think it would be nice to have it, you know, maybe before the commissioners meeting on the 5th.
Can I ask one thing? The first page, that was an even 40, correct?
Yeah,
I mean, no expenses, no nothing.
that's our intent.
Over.
Yeah.
I mean.
That first slide, our intention is that
That would be under the grant fund.
that would be in the grant fund.
And number 2,
I mean,
At least a minimum of an additional, we feel like $3 million.
yeah. It's quite a bit more. It's about 10,000 more square feet.
and then 5 on the last one,
So
correct?
for instance, yeah, I would say 5. So for instance, if you just throw $310 a square foot down for building costs, which is some recent schools being built, that's what it has cost. If you multiply that additional 9,000 or ish square feet times 310, you get about $2.9 million. So I'm just going to call it $3 million. You know, and then if you want to do the exterior auditorium and the competition gym, now I think you're going to get up to $5 million plus.
Yeah, I would sit and chew on those just for your own, on your own for now, because we can give you. I mean, you could spend a lot of time figuring stuff out, and then in 2 weeks I'll have much better numbers for you.
Do you think it's pretty well set in stone about the middle school buildings, correct? You're pretty well set in stone on
It
that?
doesn't have to be, but we can go into it, but it actually does, this layout does a lot of things that we were looking for in creating separate play areas for the 2 different grade levels, and sort of making the most of the phasing. So it is not set in stone, but I think it's a pretty good concept, and it's.
But you did made a real good point there. Separate.
I really like this plan.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons.
Well, you know,
The symmetry
when
of
you
it,
tell
I
me
like to
something
see-
that's going to be this way, you know, and now after you said why, I understand more so.
It was a surprise to
Parents
me.
will also.
We worked with our site designer, and she came up with this, and I was like, oh, that's really different. And I'm like, I know why you did that. And so we figured it out pretty well that the phasing that's the biggest way we can save money on this project, is to cut down on the duration of the construction time.
If we can build all 3 of those buildings at the same time, that is going to save us a tremendous amount of money.
And headaches.
And headaches.
And one, I didn't hear
And
it.
headaches.
And headache.
Yeah.
Logistical headaches.
Yes.
Ooh.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Any other questions for?
Sorry, I have a
Mr.
lot.
Cole or
Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
Jonathan, thank you. We didn't decide on a meeting date, is there, selfishly, I would prefer not a Tuesday night. I'm probably the only one that has a kid playing ball, but I would, but.
Well, I don't.
Well, bear in mind,
Or
this
could we
is a
do it
special.
early? Could we do it early?
This is a special called hearing for people to show up to speak to the board on behalf of these options if they choose. No decisions are going to be made or anything like that. So Mr. Caldwell could run that meeting if need be. I mean, that's certainly up to you.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's not like any action is going to be taken.
Right.
Remind me, what time did you have on that when you?
I had 6 o'clock, but that's up to the board. I mean, I would say 5:30 at the earliest, just because if people work, I mean, 5:30 is the earliest they're going to be able to come.
Of course, I could, if it was okay, come, and I could just sneak out if it gets close to, since we're just hearing opinions and thoughts, so.
It's just, I just don't want
Wednesday
people.
night's a church night, and I don't want to get into that. So.
I just don't want members of the public to think that decisions are being made in smoke-filled rooms about, you know, the buildings and the money and all. I really don't. You know, I want to be open and upfront as I can be, so that they have an opportunity to, you know, to have some say.
Which they should be.
That's right. And then we can share that if the commissioner. I'm going to invite the commissioners as well, and then of course we'll take minutes and we'll share those with the commissioners as well, because you know ultimately any local funds they have to approve. Mm-hmm. So that's not up to this board.
So I'm good with you. If Mr. Caldwell's good with if I sneak out. The 3rd.
You want to do 5:30 or 6?
Let's do 5:30.
5:30 works for me.
That's on January the 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So is that yeah, I was gonna say Tuesday, January the 3rd at 5:30. So I would need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Ms. Bailey, you're in favor?
I agree.
Yeah, Tuesday the 3rd at 5:30.
Who was the second?
Danny.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, thank you again for driving over and sharing with us. So
You can slip back to Asheville if you want. We're not talking about new schools anymore.
You got a long drive, so be safe and thank you.
What's that mountain?
Thank you.
Next, we have the recommendation to dispose of the Bethabara Road property that was given to us through a fine and forfeiture.
That's correct. So I finally received direction from our board attorney on how to handle this. I've never actually handled the board coming into possession of a property through a fine forfeiture like this and then having to or needing to sell it. So this has been my first time. This has been an educational experience. So what I need, I shared in your packet a copy of the email that I got from the board attorney on how we need to handle this. So the first thing that has to happen is that the board has to, they have to approve a resolution that declares that the property is not necessary or desirable for public school purposes, that offers the opportunity to obtain the property to the Clay County Board of Commissioners at fair market value, which we've already done, but we have to do it again after the board approves this resolution to follow the legal steps properly. And if the county does not have an interest in purchasing the property, authorize the superintendent and board attorneys to begin the process of selling the property via a negotiated offer, advertisement, and upset bid process pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 160A 269. The motion would need to be made using that language and then approved. And then at that point, I would offer the property at fair market value again to the county commissioners. They will answer one way or another. I don't think they have any interest in buying it from us. And then at that point, we can move forward with the negotiated bid and upset process. We already have 2 offers on it. So we can kind of move forward with those two bidders and then do an upset bid process. So specifically, I need a motion with that language to approve that resolution before I can move forward.
I make a motion.
Okay.
Approve it.
All in favor? Thank you. And next we have a recommendation to. Good, that's right. Next we have a recommendation to raise the annual salary for the Clay County School Board of Education members from $4,000 a year to $6,000 a year. I know that I've been on here 12 years now, finished up my 12th term, and that salary hasn't been raised any since I have been on here. Other positions within the county and within the school have had raises and bonuses and things like that, and it's become, obviously with the COVID year, 2 building projects, or COVID years, I guess, and 2 building projects, it's become much more demanding of our time and resources, and so I felt like it was a good a time as any. I don't know if there's ever a good time to do a raise, but I felt like it was a good time as any to do a raise.
Mr. Chairman, if we look at 12 years, that's a long time. We didn't ask for anything during the primary school construction. You mentioned the responsibilities. We're blessed to have a building to build, right, but it does require more time away and plus mileage and such. If there's a time, in my opinion, for us to raise it, I think it's appropriate to do it now.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Any other comments about that at all? And there's been that recommendation. Is there a motion that we do the pay increase?
I do want to say too, sorry, I do have a comment. I just think it sets up, if you've been on here for 3 terms, right? 3 terms, and that, as things are changing as fast as they are and the demand and everything, I think it sets it up for, for possibility of new members coming on board and stuff. So I would agree with that. There's a lot of time and commitment to it, and
Well, I'm going to say from my perspective as superintendent, because I know none of you guys are going to admit to this, and I don't blame you, but from my perspective, the politics involved in being a school board member over the last 4 years are much, much different than what they were prior to that. And I think you guys, it has been clear to me that the amount of emails and calls and communication has gone up at least 3-fold just in the time that I've been here, which is good in a way. That means that the public feels like they can talk to you and that you listen and that their voice is heard, and then you bring those things up. But the end result is more time, and is also much more emotional, I think, than it used to be. So, that is, the job is harder than it was 4 years ago too. So I think that's a part of it that makes this a very worthwhile recommendation.
So is there a motion to?
I'll second.
Mr. Jones, second. All in favor? Any opposed?
I abstain.
Ms. Beck is abstaining from Doug.
Did you get that, Ms. Clemens? Ms. Beck abstained.
Thank you. Next, we have the approval of the consent agenda. We have board meeting minutes from November 28th regular session. We have the policies that are in your Google Drive for action, and then there's policies first read that's also included in that Google Drive, and administrative regulations for the first read that's in there.
I just want to point out that all of those policies for action and policies for first read are all just updates from the School Boards Association of existing policies that are already in place. And then the administrative regulations there for first read. Obviously you're not taking action on those tonight, but those are new, but it's just how we plan to manage existing policies.
So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda or any discussion of those items?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second to
I'll
that?
second it.
Ms. Beck, second. All in favor? Thank you. Next, we'll have a motion to go into closed session for personnel and negotiations.
Make a motion.
I'll second it.
Caldwell makes the motion. Ms. Beck, second. All in favor?
Ms. Crawford.
Ms. Crawford, sorry.
Ms. Crawford seconds.
Ms. Crawford, second. Sorry.
All right.
Do that.
I'm sorry, did you get that one? I didn't get that.
Yeah.
Mr. Caldwell made the motion, Ms.
Ms.
Crawford seconded.
All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, folks.